Hi crafters, it's Marianne from MA Designs. Welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to talk about some different ways of using the Hunkydory Little Books. So quite a few of you will have a number of these books. They were really popular when they were first released. And these books basically contain 144 usually images that are A6 in size, and then they sell Mirri mats that are already pre-cut to fit just behind them. So it's a really easy way of making a card. You can literally pull out a piece of these pad. You can just pull out your favourite design, stick it on your card, and in theory that's a card done. I don't know about you, but as a crafter that's too easy. I don't want to do that. I want to actually make something. I want to employ some of the techniques that we've all learnt along the way. Plus, in these pads, you get more than one sheet of each design. So it's perfect if you want to do a bit of decoupage and cut some out and layer some up. So I thought I'd show you today how to do basic cards, slightly better cards, and then more complicated cards using more advanced techniques. So today I've got these three little books. These are all a Christmas theme, but you can use these techniques, the designs that I'm going to show you today, you can use them with any of the little books that you happen to have. So I've got this one here that I'm showing you is the Little Book of Snowmen. I had one of the Christmas ones just before that with loads of different Christmas images. And then on the left there, you've got the Little Book of Winter Wildlife. Fairly explanatory titles, but I'll just do a quick flip through so that you can see the images that are in these. I don't know if these are still for sale. I've had these for years. But part of the ethos of this channel is for me to try and use up the craft stash that I've accumulated over the years. And these books, although they don't take up a lot of room, I worked out I have well over 1,000 pages in the books that I have, which is unnecessary. So I do need to make some cards. So this is the very simplest idea. You can literally just get that Mirri mat, and you saw there that was the holographic one, and put a design on top, and that would be a card done. However, when I'm looking at the card blanks that I've got in my stash, a lot of them are A6, which means this piece of paper will fit more or less exactly, but there isn't room for the Mirri mat, which is slightly bigger underneath. Also, I feel like it's a wasted opportunity if you don't take out the middle of the Mirri mats. So I often do die cutting or just take a big chunk out, just cut a chunk out of the middle and save it for later, because you always need, a little die cut or a scrap or something in gold and silver, so it makes sense to not waste them. So I've skipped that design that I just showed you and now I'm on a different image, but you can see here what I'm doing. I'm just drawing on the back of the Mirri mat how big my card blank is so that I can cut it to fit. So you can see it's only a tiny sliver that needs chopping off on these two sides. It's maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, I'd say no more than 1/4 of an inch that I'm cutting off. So just chop that off with the guillotine, and then it's the right size for the card blank. The downside is you then need to trim down the image from the little book, because otherwise you wouldn't see any of the metallic around the edge. So I found a design here that doesn't have a border around it, so it's easier to cut down. So I'm just trimming tiny pieces off each side, trying to sort of centre the design, centre the characters, the scene that you've got on there. So I'm just eyeballing it against the mat to see if it's right, trimming off. You can see here it's like millimetres that I'm trimming off, but it makes the border a little bit neater on all sides. And then when I'm happy with that, you could literally just glue that on. There'd be no reason why not to, but I am tight, so I am not going to waste that card in the middle. So I just grabbed a craft knife, and you can see here, I've not even bothered with a ruler. I've just grabbed a craft mat and a craft knife, and I'm just hacking a chunk out of the middle. Just leave enough space around the outside for you to apply your adhesive. So either double-sided tape or liquid glue, whichever you choose to use. Just make sure you leave yourself enough space in that frame to apply your adhesive. And then, yeah, that piece out of the middle, you can die cut your sentiment from it. You can die cut, in this case for Christmas, you could do, you know, stars or snowflakes or embellishments. I know some people have got those dies that cut loads of dots so that you can use them as in place of enamel dots. You could do that. You can die cut anything that's small enough. So yeah, so that's how I try and make the most out of the Mirri mats. And then it's just a case of sticking them on. So I'm using double-sided tape here and using this technique of just folding back a small amount on each side so that then you've got wiggle room when you come to lining it up, and then you just peel out the backing paper once you're happy with the positioning. And that is the most basic card. Done. Ready to send. Also, it's a flat card, so you'll pay minimal postage. So you don't even need to put a sentiment. It's quite obvious to me that that is a Christmas scene. And obviously you're going to write your message to your recipient inside. However, I've got these peel-offs. And it's just a neat little peel-off in a frame. It just says Merry Christmas and it's in a frame. These are really good because they don't distort too much when you pull them off the backing paper. So you just have to make sure you poke out all of the little pieces. You can see there's a little bit of the background still stuck at the side of the M there. And then just using tweezers, make sure you get it lined up neatly and just apply it to a space on your design. So in this case it fits nicely on that bottom corner, but you just change it for whichever, you know, whatever suits the piece that the page that you've chosen. And that's it, card number 1, done. So if you're making loads and loads of Christmas cards, or if you're making them to donate or something, that's all you need to do. These designs are beautiful. This one I'm going to do fairly similar. These are, like I say, this is the basic way to use these little books. But in this case, I'm going to use a slightly bigger card blank. So this one's 7x5. And then there's room to use the Mirri mat as intended. So I don't have to faff around trimming it all down, which on this design wouldn't really work because that border kind of is a part of the design. So you don't want to trim this one down. Now I've got this really old coloured card blanks. I think I got them from the works and the card is cracked. So I'm just using a pro marker in a close enough green just to hide the white edge that's showing through. And then I've really speeded this bit up because you've seen me do it already. It's cutting and taping. You guys can do that. You don't need my tuition for that. So I've speeded this up, I can't remember, maybe 10 times the actual speed. Get that lined up, stick that down, and there you go. You've got your design that already has a border built in. And ready to go, just tape it down. Again, a flat card, smaller than an A5, so in the UK that'll go with just a single small stamp, which is the cheapest option for postage. So I'll just slow this down so that you can have a good look at it. But that's really simple. So that's basic. That's the easiest way to use the little books. So I'm going to show you a couple of designs now that I class as better, not necessarily better, but slightly more complicated, involving a little bit more crafting. So I'm rifling through the card blanks that I found and I'm trying to find something that goes. It's a bit of an awkward colourway in this design. Not sure what to do. So then I think, does it go with silver? Does it go with gold? I can't really decide. I find all these card blanks. I'm not sure whether it needs to be on a bigger one, a smaller one, a coloured one. I try all sorts of different combinations. And then eventually I find one. These shaped cards from Hunkydory, and it's a tag shaped card. And I've never really been quite sure what to do with them. So they're just kicking around in the drawer, taking up space. And I thought, let's do this then. It's going to take slightly more effort because I'm going to have to glue it in this shape. I'm going to have to trim the paper off to make it match. I'm going to make sure that lining it up as best as possible so that the design fits on the card. So I'm not trimming off anything that's, you don't want to glue it right down to the bottom and then you'll lose some of the design at the top. So trying my best to work that out. And then I'm going to use the cutter bee scissors to cut the excess off the edge, just carefully going through this top section. It looks a really simple shape, but it was actually a nightmare to cut out. It's got the curves, but there's also sort of corners. I don't know if you can see there, corners in between the curves, and well, I've made a right hash of it even with the tiny scissors. It's not easy. So I'll cut round it all the way around, and then to neaten that bit up at the top, you can see it's quite jaggedy, it's quite a mess. So I just got just a cheap nail file and just sand the paper. So you sand it from the front to the back so that you don't peel your paper off the front, and if you do make any mistakes you won't scratch your design off if you slip or anything. So just sand those off and you'll get a much neater finish. And that's it. That is a Christmas image. However, similar to the last card, I am going to put a sentiment on the front. So I've got a selection of dies. These are a mixture of non-branded ones and some that I've had from advent calendars and things. I had a tattered lace bulk buy thing from Create & Craft many years ago, and that had some sentiments in. And I had the Crafter's Companion advent calendar as well a few years ago, probably around a decade ago. But I've got all these quite small Christmas sentiments. So I've just got all of those out, and those middle sections that I'm cutting out of the Mirri mats, I'm just going to use to cut a load of sentiments. So I've got choices. And again, I've got the peel-offs as well. You saw those earlier. I've got a whole folder full of peel-offs that need using. So we've got options. So some of these dies, that's the only thing, with your older stash, technology wasn't as good, and these are really quite fine. It's quite a delicate font, and they stick in the die, and it's honestly, it's painful trying to get these out of here without stretching it or tearing it. But I think that speaks to the quality of the Hunkydory card as well, because it's quite a strongly laminated silver and gold Mirri, so it takes some effort to cut through it. So when you've got your tiny die cuts and you've chosen which one goes best on your design, this is a little bit of a tip for how to adhere fiddly bits. Just dab a bit of glue on the back of your hand and dunk the die cut into it, and then you're not splurging glue out of the bottle and getting it everywhere. So you just do a little bit of glue on the back of your hand. Obviously, if you've got allergies, if you've got sensitive skin, you know your own skin. Don't do that if it's going to annoy you or irritate your skin. But it hasn't seemed to bother me, so I can do it. I'm sure most people can. And it's water-based anyway, so as long as you wash it off fairly quickly, you should be okay. So I'm just going to apply the dot to the eye. So I'll just put a tiny blob of glue, and then I use leftover diamond painting pens to pick up the tiny dots. And when I show you the card, I've gone quite a long way out of frame, so I've just slowed it right down here so you can see the finished card. But it's as simple as that. It's still nice and flat, but it's a little bit more effort. You know you've put more effort into it. It's more unusual. It's probably going to be the only tag-shaped card that your recipient has on their wall this Christmas. So yeah, this is slightly elevated and it falls into our better category today. So next up, I'm going through that same little book, which is the Little Book of Christmas, and I really like this design. It's this sort of sepia-toned Fair Isle pattern, kind of Scandi. And again, I'm aiming for, well, this is a 5x7 card that I've got in my hand at the moment. But like I say, I've got a stash of card blanks next to me, and I keep umming and ahhing and chopping and changing, and we've got options. But sometimes too many options, and I can't quite decide what to do. So you'll see me faffing and changing my mind a few times throughout this video. But this one is one of those designs where it has a border, so you've got to be careful how much to trim off to make sure that the centre stays centred on your card and that you don't make the proportions look weird. I think I've only just managed to stay on the right side of that. It does look slightly odd, but no one's going to know. Now this is, again, a really simple thing. That shape in the middle was really simple to cut out, and I'm just going to pop it up on some foam tape. So your recipient's going to get a card with some dimension, and they're going to think you've done, you know, I don't know what they're going to think, but it's slightly more complicated than just sticking a piece of paper onto the card and leaving it flat. So you feel as a crafter like you've done a little bit more, but really you could whip these up. You could whip these up in just a few minutes if you had quite a few to make. So like I say, I've cut that piece out of the middle. It was a nice simple shape to cut out. Just mounted it on some foam tape, and then again using double-sided tape on the back to stick this panel onto a card blank. I haven't taken the centre out of this one. I forgot I've done that, but it kind of stings watching it back. That's money I'm wasting. I'm using it though. I'm using up my stash, and that's a good thing. So there you go. So this is again in your slightly elevated, slightly more crafted card category. So we're going to call this one Better. And now we're on to Best. So this section of the video is I'm going to show you a couple of cards, again using the Hunkydory Little Books, but just doing a little bit more crafting. So I found this beautiful vintage design, and I'm going to pick a few of these pages out, and I thought there was quite a lot of depth to this picture. So I'm going to do 3 layers of decoupage. Well, 1 base layer and then 2 layers of decoupage. There's I think there's 6 of each in these books, I think, from memory. So you could go further. You could do more and more layers if you want. So again, checking that it fits onto the Mirri mat. Cut the centre out. So glue your base layer on. Like if you go back to part 1 of this video, that could be your card done. You could just stick that on a card blank and done. But we want to be a little bit more advanced today. So I've had a bit of a look at the picture, and I've just thought about what pieces would be further behind other pieces in this scene. So I figure the mantelpiece of this fireplace and then the stocking that's hanging from it are going to stick out further. So they're going to be very much in the foreground. And then the fire itself will be slightly in the background, and then the actual fireplace will be further in the background. So I've made those sort of 3 layers in my mind. So I'm cutting out this front piece, again just using the cutter bees. It's really easy to cut because it's just paper. It's not cardboard, it's just paper. So it's easy enough to cut, and you can get really into the details if you want to. I've also chosen to cut the armchair and the cushions and put that right in the foreground. And then I'm looking at this other piece, trying to find where would be the midpoint between the very deepest background piece and those 2 pieces that we've cut out already to be right at the front. So I figured this pile of logs and the actual log burner will be slightly set back from the mantelpiece, but also slightly set forward from the very back of the fire. And then similarly, I'm going to cut these presents out because they're in front of the tree, but they're also behind the armchair. So that's your mid-level. So I know normally you buy die cut decoupage kits and it's all decided for you which bits are where, but you just need to look at the picture and think of it in 3D. Just think what's in the front of this scene. Takes a minute to think about it, but it's easy enough. So I've applied foam tape to all of these pieces, and it's then just a case of peeling off the back ends and sticking it down onto the design. You do have to be a little bit careful because, like I say, it is paper, you can rip it. You'll see I just did that there. I've ripped off the stocking accidentally because it's just held on by a string, but that's fine because you just stick it back on and no one's going to know really. No one's going to question that the tiny little string has gone. And so just like that, you've got 3 layers and you've got quite a complex looking decoupage card. So I'm just going to show you this in as many angles as possible so that you can see how much depth and dimension we've managed to get there. Just cutting a few pieces out. So you can see you've got your tree set back in the background and your actual fireplace set back in the background. And then those other elements that we've cut out just popped up coming forward. And then of those greetings that I die cut, when I die cut a few things out a few minutes ago, just poking out all these little bits that I've got. They're not stuck, it has cut through, but it's just clinging with there being that laminate coat on the front of the card. So just take your time to poke those out, and then it looks much more professional, and obviously then your sentiment is legible. And then dab a bit of glue. Again, I'm using the Tonic Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. I find it's a really good mixture of a really good balance between quick drying, but also gives you that little bit of wiggle room. And applying the apostrophe with the diamond painting pen. And then I'm going to use a bit of tape runner to stick this onto this is a 5x7 card blank. but it's ever so slightly the wrong proportion. So I'm just trimming a tiny bit off the edge of the card. I still use the same envelope, it's fine, no one's going to really know. And just look at that dimension. Hopefully you can see that at this angle, or the different dimension. And then just that little bit of metallic sheen. Done. Took much longer than the basic cards where we just stuck the panel down, but definitely feels more like you've had a crafting session. Definitely feels more like you've used your skills and made something unique. And then finally, the last card I'm going to show you today. I had this card blank, that has these embossed, well, they're debossed snowflakes. And I've had this many years. I think it was part of a Forever Friends range that Paper Mania and Do Crafts did years and years ago. I've just never used them. So we've got this A6 card blank with these beautiful little snowflakes around the edge. And I thought I'll use those. And I've got this image that I've taken from the Little Book of Snowmen. I thought he'll go nicely with snowflakes. That's what he's made of after all. So I've got a Distress ink in a blue colour. I can't remember exactly which shade this is. Probably Broken China, looking at it. But any of your blue inks that you've got. And I'm just using the Dome Foam and dabbing it on. Trying to blend it, but we're going to mostly cover this. And then, yeah, so I've got this snowman image. I changed my mind. I picked this one because I figured it'd be easier to cut out than the one you can just see at the top of the screen on the right there. Changed my mind and I've gone for this one. And he's got his own grounding. He's sat on like a mound of snow. So it's really easy to just cut away the background and be left with that mound of snow that he's sitting on. And you'll see when I put this on the card, it just gives it makes more sense than to just have a floating snowman. So you see there that it sort of looks like it belongs, and then it looks like the snowflakes that are debossed, it looks like they're just floating down in the background. So again, loads of foam tape, because with these only being made of paper, you want to make sure they're really, really well supported. If it was thicker card, I might have put quite a bit less tape on, but I thought it was worth taking the time to support it all over the back if possible. So just pop him up. And then I also had these snowflake stickers. Again, they could have come from the works. I don't remember. They've been in my stash a really long time. It's time to use them. The only thing that's going to happen to them if you don't use them is eventually they'll stop being sticky and you'll chuck them in the bin. So you're not wasting them by using them. You're wasting them by not using them. And that is a mentality that it's taken me a really long time to come around to. But yeah, if it's just sat in a drawer, it's already being wasted, isn't it? So I've gone off the edge with these and trimmed off the excess and then used those to stick on the other edge so that it looks more like a natural snow flurry rather than just stuck, like whole snowflakes just stuck on look a little bit false. See, these have already started to lose their stick. Like I say, they are really quite old. I can't even remember buying them. It's just something I seem to have always had. And I'm not sure why I've never used them, because they are lovely. I don't know. Maybe I was saving them for best. Tell me I'm not alone in that. Does everyone else do that? So I've just added a little bit of liquid glue to the ones that have deteriorated. It's not a problem. We still get to use them. And then I've die cut this. This is from one of the holographic Mirri mats that I've used on a different card that's not a part of this video. Again, I just chopped out the centre, so I'm using that piece of excess card to cut my sentiment from. And another way of adhering your tiny die cuts, just dab some glue on your finger and dab it on. And again, I went out of frame when I was showing you the card, but I think you get the gist. Slightly popped up. Again, it's only I'm using the 1mm foam tape, so it should still go through the post with a regular stamp on it. And that's it. That's our last card done. Yeah. And again, you feel like you've done some crafting, you've done your fussy cutting, you've got your inks out, proper crafty session. So we'll just review the cards that we've made today. We've got the 2 flat ones where we just use the whole panel as it is. We've got the shaped card. We've got 1 layer of decoupage. We've got 3 layers of decoupage. And we've got ink blending and fussy cutting. 6 cards. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've found some inspiration from today. Please comment down below and let me know if you can think of anything else, any other way of using your little books. And let's get started on those Christmas cards, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.